Welcome, everybody. All right, today we are talking about inner freedom. Now, that may sound like an ambiguously strange title and an ambiguously strange topic, but here's the deal. Many of us are imprisoned in our lives. Many of us are imprisoned in our story. Many of us are imprisoned in our relationships with people and our obligations to our life. And we're tied down by so many different things that it weighs upon our character, it weighs upon our soul, and it dictates trauma, and it dictates a whole lot of a feeling that our life is outside of our control. What is really important is this concept of inner freedom because it allows you to come back to your very nature, to come back to yourself. And it doesn't mean you live without self-discipline. It doesn't mean you don't take accountability for the things you need to take accountability for, but it allows you to understand that you can be free. You're not a victim in all of your life. And moving through that idea of inner freedom gives you the ability to come back to your very nature, to come back to who you are, and come back to your ability to tap into the joy of your life. Freedom, as described by a German social psychologist and humanist back in the 40s, Erich Fromm. And the final goal is individuation. And Fromm's concept of freedom is close to David Shapiro's, which was 40 years later, back in the 80s, early 80s, the concept of autonomy, becoming an independent agent in the world. It encompasses a capacity to manifest what makes you unique to yourself without recourse to either self-absorption or self-abnegation. And then Bowen created the concept of differentiation itself, and that was back also in the 80s. And Murray Bowen, by the way, and that entails the idea and the ideal of individualism. Now, individualism sounds like a very selfish thing, but what's really important about individualism is that you actually understand your purpose, your passion. What am I born to do? What is my life about? But bigger than that is, who do I want my talents to serve? What is my purpose? Your purpose in life is never about you. It is about others. And it is about the others in which you want to influence in this life. When an individual lacks autonomous psychological agency, they're likely to feel insecure, insignificant, have doubts about the meaning of life, because they feel like they're living for everyone else. There was this other thing called Enlightenment moral philosophy, and that was back in the late 90s by a guy, I think his last name was Kant. And it requires acting in accord with the moral duty above desire or merely meeting others' demands. It involves deciding and acting in alignment with that duty. And that duty is your purpose. Now, these are all very psychological and philosophical ideals that we're putting out there. But without the big picture, it's really hard to drill down into the benefits of freedom and inner freedom. Now, another romantic philosopher, John Stuart Mill, now he was back in the mid 50s, and he reacted against enlightenment, arguing for individuality of desire as a fundamental to autonomy and character. A person whose desires and impulses are their own are the expression of their own nature. And it's been developed and modified by their own culture. And that's called character. But I'm going to tell you what character really is. Character is the ability to make decisions and change your mind if you need to evolve your decisions based on the needs and based on the context of every situation in life. What that means is people who are decisive are often the people that most people hate, because people love to hate decisive people. Decisive people have character. Decisive people take a stand. Decisive people teach other people how to love them by making decisions in life. Indecisive people envy decisive people because they cannot make decisions, therefore, most people do not love them. Decisive people make a way into their life, and that decision making without the need to apologize to others for who you are and what you stand for is called inner freedom. That is a very important thing to have in your life. But that means you have to stop being motivated by external things in life, how people view you, who are you there to please, what is your life about giving? Who is it about giving to? I'm just a giver. You know, if you're one of these overly needy people who is codependent and they have to give everything away in your life to other people to define your value, you are way out of balance. What you really have to understand is that freedom is the ability to assert yourself into situations knowing that you have to fill your own tank before you can fill everybody else's. When a person lacks freedom, whether to decide or to act out of moral duty or to feel authentically one's own unique desires, there's a tendency for self-functioning to be compulsive and reactive rather than self-directed. And what that really means conceptually is, are you going to live a reactive life where you're reacting to everything around you? Or are you going to live a responsive life where you make decisions and take direction? Responsive people have peace in their life. Responsive people have freedom in their life because they give themselves the leeway to allow themselves to make decisions and change their mind and adapt their decisions as they need to. That is where freedom is. Freedom is within yourself. But the people who live externally, which are often the people that are younger than 40 years old, because at your midlife crisis, you finally figure out that you're not that important. Everybody doesn't think about you. You are not the center of the universe. And the fact is that you're not that important. And if you realize you're not that important, you can start making decisions in your life without apologizing and having to worry about how people see your decisions. Now, what happens then is people go crazy and they buy the red Corvette and they start breeding with somebody 20 years younger, and they start spending all their retirement and acting like a lunatic, losing their home, losing their marriage, losing their kids. That's what people do because they see what that freedom gives them. I'm not that important. I need to just enjoy my life. I need to discover who I am, and they overcompensate during the midlife crisis. But if you can finally balance yourself out and realize that you don't have to go batshit crazy just because you realize that the world is not staring at you and you can crash and burn and get back up and still function in life. You can make decisions and be wrong, and it's okay. You will live. You know, there's back in the 19th century, Kierkegaard, Soren Kierkegaard, who developed basically the concept of existentialism, which is another philosophy. You know, it is about the anxiety of the dizziness of freedom. Now, what that really means is it's called existential angst. Many people have existential angst in their life because they lack the courage, lack the ability to harness their energy, harness themselves, harness their introspection to realize, what is it that I'm born with? What gifts do I have? What hard things have I done in my life? Where have I found the most happiness in my life? And harness that place and turn it into something that makes a life for you, that gives to other people in a way that they need to be given. You know what existential angst is passion and purpose, and discovering that and going in that direction, because without passion and purpose, you're sitting in limbo, and that's where existential angst is. The anxiety of not knowing why you're on this planet and what your purpose is and why you have done. You know, you look back on all of your choices and they're just a mishmash of stupidity and reactivity. And now you got to put it all together into something that is responsive. So yes, you're going to have to mop up your reactive life, and carry it into your future, but you're going to have to roadmap it. And you're going to have to roadmap it without everybody else approving of it. It needs to be your direction for your life determined by yourself. Now, Kierkegaard back in 1844 thought about anxiety may be compared with dizziness. And this is what term that they used back then. But he whose eye happens to look down on the yawning abyss becomes dizzy. So what that means is when you're looking at your life as being empty or not being on track or not being where the direction it needs to go, there is a desperation that happens. I need to get divorced. I need to spend less time. I need to quit my job. I need to do all these things because you stare at this dizziness, you stare at this emptiness, and you want to fill it, but you don't know what to fill it with. If you don't have the answer about your passion and purpose, if you don't have the ability to go down deep into the introspection, if you don't have the courage to make decisions, then don't start making reactive choices because you're in a panic. You need to calm down and start forming a roadmap for your future. You know, it's a terror to not believe that you've lived your life without direction. That's a real scary place for many people. But the freedom comes with the ability to have the self-discipline to control your direction with your life and to choose new choices and choose new directions. But here's the bottom line. If you really want freedom in your life, you have to be able to fully grasp and fully connect and fully decide you're making a decision and go in that direction. You have to commit. If you're going to realize anything in your life, you have to commit. If you're going to be married, it's based on how much you commit to your marriage is what you will get out of it. In your career, how much you commit to your career will determine how much you get out of it. Everything in your life, how much you get out of it will be determined by your level of commitment to it. That's why we love sports. We want to see one team with all of the best athletes at their highest desire to win, and the other team with their best athletes and the highest desire to win, and then they both go at each other, and we hope that that is going to be a wonderful event to watch human beings at their best, in their greatest skill, exercising it at their peak moment, trying to win. That's what people yearn to see, but you can do that in your own life when you fully commit to it. That is when you can understand and feel and gain direction. But commitment requires the ability to make decisions. And there are so many wimpy, indecisive, looking back on every decision they ever make and have to be perfect and have to be exact. No, you need to make a decision, get it in the ballpark, and then start the pottery wheel. Start forming it. You know, you have to have the courage to make it's kind of like when you decide to go to college and you get a business degree, you're going to go, I'm going to go get a business degree. That's why I'm going to go to this college. But then you walk out with a music degree. It's kind of like that. We have to have the courage to make decisions to start the journey. And then after that, we start finding where we belong. You know, when Erich Fromm also described in this back in the 40s the escape from freedom, and that there's mechanisms that he believed that people utilize to create negative aspects of freedom and lost security. And what some of those were was authoritarianism, destructiveness, and automation conformity, meaning doing the same thing over and over and over without ever thinking about it. These mechanisms bring security, but at the cost of our freedom, because now we lose the ability to be fully present and enjoy what we have in the moment that we have it. Many people exist on this planet and cope with their life without ever being fully present. You know, the authoritarian is a sadist. They dominate other people in a way of attempting to gain what they lack within themselves, which is control. And they abuse also their abuse rises from addiction to the experience of relational power. This is something that authoritarians need. They gain that. And when you are an authoritarian in your life, when you are a control freak in your life, you're going to have psychosis. There's another thing, masochism, and that's a self-destructive character. And what that means is the willingness, to what we do is we throw ourselves into situations where we think we are a savior, but we're not. And so what we go in is try to save other people, but what we do is we spend all our resources trying to save others, including our energy and our emotions, and then we are the ones that sink to the bottom. That's called self-defeating. And then there's this automation conformity, which is basically like a hypnotic state. And that's preserving habits in our life to fall back on these habits as something that we call existence. If you are in a habit, we protect our habits. We are preserve our habits. We will go way above and beyond. We will take great amounts of stress just to allow ourselves to maintain a habit. And when you do that, what happens is you destroy your ability to exist. Coping is not living. Viktor Frankl back in the 50s, 59, he was a concentration camp survivor. And basically, he once again looked at existentialism. And existentialism is meaning learning to live within the context of your life as it is, which is what he did to get through a concentration camp, the concentration camps. He existed in the moment, in the day that he lived, every day without forecasting what his future was going to be like and what his past was like. He lived in the present. And that's what got him through concentration camps. He later went to the United States and taught prisoners how to live in prison and make peace with their life there and build community there, which also was the stepping stone to education entering into our prison systems. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back and talk more about internal freedom. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about inner freedom. Life is anxiety. It is freedom, but it's responsibility. And if you're going to live predicting what the future is going to be like and hypothesizing about outcomes, you're going to spin all of the gerbil wheels in your brain and waste your life. What's really important is to understand that to live well means that you have to have the confidence in yourself that no matter what happens ahead of you, you'll deal with it. The journey is the outcome. Staying in the journey is resiliency. That's the most important part of living, is the journey is the outcome, not the outcome is the journey. Many people in this day and age, because we're so impatient and we get so many things laid at our doorstep, mostly Amazon packages, that we are results driven. Well, that's counterintuitive to the human being. The human being has to survive, used to have to survive in the prairie, in the jungle, in tribes. And that is because in living that way, we had to hunt for our food, we had to gather together, we had to survive together. And if you're going to survive in any kind of difficult situation, you have to be resilient, which means you have to live in the moment. There's a lot of happiness and joy in the ability to live in the moment. And that's how you have to wonder how these third world country people can laugh and have a good time in such a dire way of living. And that is because they live in the present. They don't understand what depression and anxiety is. The reason they don't understand it is because they can't afford it. It's all these idiots that live in first world countries that are always wanting to make their life so safe that they don't have to use their brain to do much more than think about what's going to be on television tonight. You know, it's amazing that we have to think about life as like a game of snakes and ladders. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And we have to take that as the way life operates. There are things that are not supposed to happen. There's not supposed to be downs when you're on your way up, but there are. And that's because we live with expectations. What people do is when they get in their head and they lose their freedom, they start laying expectation upon expectation in their life. I expect my kids to do their homework. I expect, our mortgage to be paid. I expect my paycheck to be a such and such amount. I expect my employer never to lay me off. I expect all kinds, expecting. To live with expectation is the most depressing thing in your life. It steals your freedom. If you want to be an individual that ebbs and flows with life, you have to think in terms of I prefer. I prefer that you talk like this to me. I prefer that this happened instead of this. I prefer this. I prefer that we went to this place instead of this place. When you do I prefer, you're asserting yourself moment by moment into your life. And you're allowing yourself to teach other people how to love you. That's a very important component of our existence. The deal is that we have to be able to take leaps of faith. Life is a faith-based venture. If you want to be free in your life, you have to understand that every decision you will ever make is a leap of faith. Okay, I'm going to get married, leap of faith. Take a job, leap of faith. Go to the grocery store, leap of faith. Buy that car, leap of faith. Get in the car, leap of faith. Get on the freeway, leap of faith. Make a friend, leap of faith. Go to a new church, leap of faith. All of these things are leaps. Have children, leaps of faith. Everything you do is a leap of faith. Yes, you can calculate what you want the result to be, but to expect what the result's going to be is pretty stupid. If you're going to spend your life trying to exact the results of your decisions, you are wasting your life. The freedom of life requires us to put our brain down the path of learning how to live in faith, not fear. When fear enters, faith leaves. When faith enters, fear leaves. If you're a fear-based person, which most people are, you're going to be calculating in your head every single decision that you ever make. The deal is you've got to just put yourself out there. You've got to put your life out there and you've got to work with the results you get in return. That is where freedom comes from. It's accepting the fact that I know that no matter what results I get, I will deal with it. I will work with it. It will be okay. It may not be fun. It may be difficult, but I'll probably learn something if it doesn't go the right way, or if it becomes hard, I will learn something and I will dig in and I will consistently feed myself into the problems that present themselves into my life, and I will work with them as they come. We want to be able to be right in the moment, to celebrate when life is awesome, and to invite love in for ourselves when it's not, and the judgment of whether something is good or bad that creates more suffering for us, it's judgment that can hurt us. This is what hurts our freedom in life, is the idea of having justice and fairness. If you're going to be a person who subscribes to justice and fairness as a need in your life, and you'd be surprised how many idiots live that way, to expect things to be fair. Fair is a place where they judge pigs. Life is not fair. Life is not going to give you justice. Life is going to give you whatever it gives you. God is going to give you whatever God gives you, and you will have to deal with it. That's life. You may be chugging along doing great things with your life, and then all of a sudden you get a cancer diagnosis. Guess what? Deal with it, because that is what life is. We deal with things as they come. It's your attitude that's more important. It is your faith and ability to grab into faith that I can still have a bad thing and still keep moving on with my life. And I will deal with it the best I can deal with it, and it will be God's will is going to be the final result. That's it. It's faith. That's life. It's all faith. But people fight it. And that's where we become human. And that's where our human drags us down, is we live in fear. Oh, I'm afraid my wife's going to leave me. Okay, well, be afraid your wife's going to leave you, or have faith she's going to stay with you. You know, which one do you want to live in? Because the fear she's going to leave you, that's going to, or the fear he's going to leave you is going to cause you to do all kinds of stupid gymnastics and over compromise and sell your soul because you're trying to prevent an outcome, when actually what you just need to be is faith-based, that I am valuable enough, and if I'm not, and you got to go park the thing down the street, well, go park the thing down the street. You did me a favor, thank you very much. Now I can move on with my life. You know, it's really important to understand that we have to look for peace in our life. But peace requires something of you, and that is the ability to accept the unacceptable. That is what peace is you accept the unacceptable and then you deal with it. That is what gives you freedom in life. If you are not able to accept the unacceptable, you're going to want justice and fairness. And if you're going to do that, that's a hell of a lot of money. It's a hell of a lot of energy. It's a hell of a lot of work. And there's a real good chance you're going to lose some very valuable relationships in the process. Justice and fairness is not going to happen in this life on your watch the way that you want it. Justice and fairness happens in life circumstantially, as it needs to happen, and you have no control over that. You can pursue justice and fairness, but there is a cost in your pursuit of justice and fairness, and do you want to waste your life's energy pursuing that? Anything you accept fully will get you there. You take it, you take peace in, and it's the miracle that happens when you surrender. You surrender yourself to what you cannot control. That's important. If you're married and you've got a jerk partner and they're doing stupid things, you cannot control what they do. Let them go. And understand, I can only control me, and I can choose whether I want to be with them or not. Your choices are your freedom. You have to understand that you can change your mind. You have that right in this life to change your mind. But hopefully when you do change your mind, you don't do it reactively. You do it responsively, meaning you make plans. You provide a roadmap for yourself. You don't just jump because somebody pisses you off and make a decision, because if you live that way, you make bad choices and you spend a lot of life mopping up your problems that you create. You know, there's other things that get in the way of freedom. Envy, lust, rage, sorrow, dread, and pride. These are things that are instilled in our human nature. Envy, lust, rage, sorrow, dread, and pride. All of these get in the way of every commitment that we have in this life. They infest and infect every direction and every decision we ever make when we incorporate them into our character. If you're going to go down this visceral path of lust, envy, rage, sorrow, and dread, and pride, you are an externally motivated person. That means that you have not become your own person. You're trying to become someone else. If you have those ingredients, you compare yourself to other people in your life and you try to be them instead of be yourself. Well, that's like a 12-year-old trying on new outfits that everybody else is trying on, trying the music that other people are listening to instead of the music that they like. That's a person trying to become someone else. That means that you're borrowing other people's decisions to see if they integrate into who you are. Well, that's great when you're 12 years old, but when you're 40 years old, you better get over all the stupid consequences of envy, lust, rage, sorrow, dread, pride. They're all horrible qualities to exist with, and they're all externally motivated. Wisdom is a human being who is internally motivated. They don't care how people see them. They care about making decisions of integrity, decisions that help life, that contribute to life. These are very important ingredients in all people that we must value. Another kind of psychological freedom is the Freudian fingerprint. It's the freedom from endlessly engaging in the same tired personal and interpersonal bad habits. You know, the majority of people considering pursuing psychotherapy believe that people should seek therapy when they want to change repeating patterns. Sigmund Freud, had the concept of repetition compulsion. And that means what he basically said is the human tendency to get caught up in the same relationship problems, the same career mishaps, go nowhere arguments, partners, parents, friends, siblings, coworkers, all of them incorporated into these consistent problems that we create for ourselves, where wisdom never comes forward and propagates change. We are weird creatures. And the creatures that we are, the sad part about who we are as people is that we have a tendency to do the same thing over and over again. We have a tendency to train wreck our life. We have the tendency to sacrifice ourselves by making decisions that make no sense to our life. What you really want to do is back up and understand that, you know, if you're going to have repetition compulsion, doing the same thing over and over and over again, you are coping with something in your life. If you're an alcoholic, you're coping with something horrible inside yourself. If you're a drug addict, you're coping with something horrible inside yourself. If you have to do certain routines every day of your life, you're coping with something horrible inside yourself. We need to look into ourselves. You have to understand that this life, and if you want to come from a God Christian perspective, God creates this sense of suffering. The reason that human beings have to suffer and put ourselves into great suffering is because that's what it takes for a human being to change. Their degree of suffering is what it takes to get out of lust, rage, sorrow, dread, pride, envy. All of these things, if you want to end them, it will end by suffering. Consequences. Suffering is what takes our life into account and says, hey, enough is enough. And people will do the same repetition and the same habits over and over again until they finally hit a wall, until finally everything blows up, and then they go, okay, I can't have this in my life anymore. I got to change something. Because we are so stubborn and so obstinate that it takes suffering for us to learn. You know, people who have psychoanalytic thinking, therapists, and people who seek that, people talk about their childhoods and they yield a lot of material that points out things between what's occurred in the past and what's happening now in the present. That's great. That's great for psychotherapy because our past does tend to follow patterns that dictate into our future. And we have to be really careful with that. And we've got to understand that that is a part of our life. And it's great to have that insight. But what's more important is your ability to stay here in the present. Because people that stay here in the present have less psychosis in their life. but that means they have to be more into relationships. There's examples of psychological freedom, and that's the capacity to be independent, unburdened by fears, traumas, rigid conformity, allowing authentic decision making, emotional well being. These are terms of balance. We need to overcome things like phobias, toxic behaviors, toxic relationships, making choices aligned with our personal values. All of this requires boundaries. What are boundaries? The ability to say no to things that are not good for you. If you want to have psychological freedom, you have to have boundaries. Now, boundaries can begin with the weaker people in this life as what I can do and what I can't do instead of yes no. Since you can't stand the yes no, if you're a big wimp, then go to the what I can do and what I can't do, so you can start drawing lines of boundaries. Emotional liberation comes from from being free from chronic worry, anxiety, anger. Anger is looking at everything that everyone does as disrespecting you. Well, that means you're a narcissist. Angry people are narcissists because all they care about is people disrespecting them. They look for the worst of the worst of the worst in all transactions and how people are disrespecting me. There's also this chronic worry, fear. Always looking for fear. Always looking, oh, my boss is going to fire me. Oh, this is going to happen. Oh, we're not going to be able to pay our mortgage. Oh, our kid's going to flunk out of school. People that catastrophize, they drive themselves nuts. If you want to lose your freedom, go down the path of anxiety and anger, and you will. If you want to go down a path where you're not collecting anxiety and anger, why don't you actually look around and keep yourself present by looking for what you're grateful for? Now that is the remedy to resentment. That absolves resentment. Learning to be grateful. That heals a lot of things in relationships and it keeps you present. All right, we're going to take another break. We're going to come right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about inner freedom. Here's another thing. Psychological freedom. It requires us to overcome fear-based behavior. If you're going to conquer a phobia like public speaking, freely sharing your ideas without being hindered by anxiety, people that do public speaking understand that there's a part of this audience that's not going to hear what I'm saying, not going to care what I'm doing. And there's another part that's going to grab onto it and go, yeah, that's fine. And then there's going to be maybe a little part of some people that are going, yeah, that jives with me. And that is what you have to accept. That life is not always going to, not everybody is going to care about what you care about. That other people have opinions, other people have preferences. If you're going to be married, it's about understanding that the world does not have my perception of the truth, and I have to navigate the world accordingly and not hold the fact that they see things different than I do against them. If you do that, you have freedom. If you also give yourself autonomy from social conformity, that's another form of psychological freedom. The ability to make independent decisions that contradict popular opinion, group pressure, such as choosing an unconventional career path despite family disapproval. That's an example. Choosing a path that is integrity to you. Choosing a path that feels right to you, but that does not mean you're going to stay with it. What that means is you're going to evolve with it. It's a beginning. And you have to have courage to do that. You also have to understand if you're going to be psychologically free, you have to let go of the past. You have to break free from integrated automatic reactions formed in childhood or past relationships. You have to stop, for instance, the cycle of people pleasing. You have to stop, for instance, the cycle of needing to be right. You have to stop with the obsession on a promotion at work and maybe be a better human at work and care about other people and get your promotion by impacting other people's lives by the way that you treat them and the way you care about them. Letting go of the past is huge because that's letting go of the biased story that you have told yourself about your spouse, about your friends, about the people around you, the people that you judge. You just sit around judging people. And if we sit around like assholes judging people in our life, you're picking from every transaction that we have with a human being 2% of what is available. That means you're always looking for validating your biased story about this person, and you're not really listening to the person. You're not really looking at the person. All you're looking for is how to make yourself be right about the story that you have about a person. That's not freedom. That's a jerk. And if you're going to be a jerk, you're not free. You are in prison in your own judgment. You are the jailer of your life. And you put everybody in jail because of the story you tell about each one of them. And they're all in their own jail cells in your brain being judged by you. If you want to be free, you let them all go and let them have their perception of life and let them live their life and communicate with them and celebrate their life instead of sitting around and be grateful for the things they do in their life if you want to bring out the better in them. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to reframe negative situations, view challenges and opportunities rather than threats. So here's an example. Who is your best customer? The one that is standing there at the counter yelling at you, or the one that walks away? Well, some would say, especially the weird conflict avoidant wimpy people, they would say it's the one that walks away. No, it is the one that's standing there yelling at you. They're telling you how bad they need you. They're telling you how important you are to them. That's why they're making an ass of themselves. Your spouse, if they're sitting there calling you a jerk or calling you names or saying horrible things about you, what they're really saying is, I love you and I need you and I need you to hear me. But instead of that, you hang on to their words and you hang on to their statements. Oh, well, 20 years ago, you said this, this, this. You are such an idiot. It was a red flag. It was a red flag to tell you, I don't believe you're listening to me. That's what was being communicated, not the words that you are this, you are that. But people are so egotistical, they can't understand the messages they're being sent. Your best customer is the one who's putting energy into communicating with you because they're telling you, I need you to help me in my life. That's a gift. Choosing self-care is another form of freedom, and that's actively deciding to prioritize your own health, reducing exposure to negative, high stress, or toxic environments because they will suck the soul straight out of your body. If you're going to sit around with whiny people who never do anything about their problems, you become a whiner too. What you want to be is like the cop or the firefighter. Hey, when you need some help, I'm here for you. I'll be glad to throw you a rope. I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to like fix your problem, but I will be here for you. I do care about you, but I'm not going to fix your problem. And you see, the thing about being a human being, if you want to be free, that means you have to be free to allow people to have their feelings and not try to fix them. Just listen. Validate. Oh, that must hurt. Oh, I can understand how you feel. That must feel that must feel very hard. That must feel very difficult. That must make you angry. I can understand that. You validate feelings. That's validating a person for being human. That's called respect. But people are idiots and they have to do, "Oh, well, I got to solve this feeling." Oh, you can't feel that way. I can't believe you feel that way. You're not supposed to feel that way. Well, what are you, freaking God? Shut the hell up and validate a feeling. That's what it is to be a human being. Freedom from liberation from internal burdens like fear, guilt, limiting, subconscious beliefs, negativity. These are important things. Being grateful, being complimentary, using words of affirmation is the opposite. That's called freedom. The ability to pursue goals, passions, self-actualization, not being able to know what an end result is, but starting the journey anyway. That is freedom, where we have the ability to express our self-expression without sabotaging defensive or compulsive patterns, without fear, going in a direction and taking on the challenge and actually finishing. That's why when a person goes to, let's say, college, a 4-year degree, what that really says is if you finished your bachelor's degree, nobody really cares about your stupid degree as much as they care about the idea that you finished. That says a lot about your character, that you started and ended a journey in your life. That means you can be counted on to take on something hard and actually finishing it. That says a lot about your character. Now, if you go on into your master's and your doctorate, that's a great thing because that means you're willing to do hard things that are going to help other people. Not that your bachelor won't teach you hard things. It does teach you hard things. And yes, you're going to walk out with skills, but most of them are general skills. Existential freedom is not the same as freedom in a political sense. We often think of in America. In fact, political freedom could be viewed from a rather shallow type of freedom. You know, a person can be existentially free despite not being politically free. If you're going to tie yourself to a political party, you're probably going to have a lot of problems because if you look at like the freaking Democrats, they've lost their minds. Literally lost their, these people are certifiably lost their minds. And people are so stupid that they will listen to the garbage that comes out of their lack of intellect mouths and buy it because they're lazy and they love false promises. And it's really sad. But if you're going to tie yourself to a political party, if you're going to tie yourself to a movement, you're going to lose your objectivity. And you have to understand that the best voter politically in this world is the independent. And that's a person who's able to make their mind up for themselves. They don't vote by party. They vote by who's the right person for it. But the deal is you need to do the research to figure that one out because people voting for all the idiots, all these progressively idiotic people who want to infiltrate the United States with and every other country with people coming from third world countries who will eventually develop a population that will take over our country. And our value system will be gone. You know, as an American, Thomas Jefferson was like, you don't let everybody from the world come into your freaking country. You have to be mindful and you have to bring people in that are going to contribute to your country and contribute to your government. They're not people that are going to tear your country down. You know, if we're going to become a global world, we're going to lose our intellect because we learn from each other as countries by how we operate as countries. We learn from each other's cultures and we develop the best of the best of the best. We integrate the best of each other into each other. That is innovation. And we need to have differences in governments to be able to bring in what are the best ideas that work. But if you're going to be free, you have to choose to be free. And that means that if we are unaware of the things in our life that influence us, that put us in prison, if we just magically allow ourselves without boundaries to go through life, you're going to be locked in your spouse's prison. You're going to be locked in your children's prison. You're going to be locked in the prison of your job. You're going to be locked in the prison of your church. You're going to be locked in the prison of your politics. If you want to be free, you have to decide that I am independent in this life. I will make choices, and guess what? You will have to make room for me. That doesn't mean we're going to do it my way. What it means is I have an opinion. I have a place I come from. And if I'm going to be involved in these choices, I need to be integrated into these choices to where we have compromise. And I'm more than willing to understand where everybody else comes from and compromise. That is called freedom. Freedom comes from the ability to compromise. Freedom comes from the Socratic ability to hear other people's opinion about the same topic, understand where they come from, and then integrate a solution based on the best of everybody else's thoughts. That is where real intellect comes from. That is where real education comes from, not from A, B, C, D, F grades like we do in the United States. Your grades do not validate your intellect. What validates your intellect is the ability to understand other people, understand concepts, understand what you have read, understand not studied to make an A and then move on and never have learned anything. You know, we have to have will. We have to have agency. You know, Friedrich Nietzsche in Germany called it the will to power. And that means will is your soul. Will is your primal driver. And without it, if your will is broken, especially if you grew up in a narcissistic home with narcissistic parents, they will break your will. If you're with a terrible spouse who has to have everything their way, they will break your will. If you're under an employer who doesn't care about your humanity, doesn't care about you as a human being, they will break your will. You do not want your will to be broken. Your will is your primal driver. Your boundaries need to be around preserving your will. You will not break me. That is the concept that we have to hold ourselves to, because that dictates where we put boundaries and where we don't. It's a very important part of freedom, is the ability to preserve our will. You know, this relationship with you is breaking my will. I will not allow it. I will not allow you to break me. You can try to break me, but you're not going to break me. And so if the end is that you and I are toxic and I cannot have you in my life, that will be the end. Because I am not going to destroy my will at the cost of dealing with your ugly ass. This is called boundaries, guys. You need to do that. You know, we are going to be held back by routine because many people want to do everything where they don't have to think because we're lazy. If you're going to be a lazy person, you're not going to be a free person. You are going to be a part of a herd, and you're going to live in a herd mentality. Lazy people are a part of a herd. They don't lead herds. And if they do, they lead them to death. What you want to understand is people who have a will, people who have strength, people who have vision, people who have purpose, those are the people you want to have in your life, because they understand what it's like to be alive. People that are grateful. If you can come across someone in your life who's actually optimistic and grateful, that is a gift from God. You should take that and nourish from it as much as you possibly can. A person who is grateful understands what it takes to be free. That's our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage, voiceamericamedia.com or libsyn.com, Libsyn, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now remember, red, white, and blue represent freedom until it is flashing behind you when you're driving. Also, true freedom is when you take nothing personally. Also, freedom of speech allows us to know who the idiots are. Thanks for listening.